Smith, Creighton off the side, he's just taken them down one by one. And Rocket, well, they keep their position at #1 in the European League. Look at the ultimates coming down here for the Super Hot Crew. They've done so much damage. They've taken down Fnatic, and now they're going to take down Gambit. What a week it's been for SK Gaming. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week 6 of the European League of Legends Championship Series. As always, we are broadcasting to you live from our studio here in Cologne, Germany. I am Lee D-Man Smith, and alongside me is Trevor Quickshot Henry, and we are excited to bring you an unbelievable week of matches.
Yeah, that's right, D-Man. It is hard to believe that it's already been a month and a half of games between these 8 teams. And as we saw last week, things continue to be unpredictable here in the European LCS. Every capable of beating every other team in the league, and hopefully this trend will continue.
Well, of course, before we get things underway in the European standings, let's take a quick look at some of the big news from last week. First up, let's take a look at the North American League, where TSM are continuing to dominate at the top of the league, while Cloud9, well, they lost out to Counterlogic Gaming.
Yeah, well, Counterlogic Gaming looked super strong last week. Their full roster with Dexter, once again, looked really good. They were performing well. And with a week of practice, let's see if they can continue their strong showings heading into the NA games on Saturday. Dignitas, on the other hand, they've gone back to their old ways, and they've been struggling in comparison to the strength at the beginning of the split.
And of course, we also saw the conclusion of the Challenger Series last week with our first 2 winners. LMQ in North America and Cloud9 Eclipse in Europe, both securing themselves 2-0 victories.
So the LMQ games was quite interesting because they bounced back from being behind in both of their games against Complexity. They closed out the series 2-0, but it was by no means a whitewash or as dominant as we were expecting. Over in Europe, Cloud9 Eclipse, they won their European Challenger Series by beating the Ninjas in Pajamas, each netting themselves 9 points as they try to battle their way into the LCS. There is still another Challenger Series that will be starting in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, of course, moving on to the European LCS, will we see the fall of Fnatic? After going an incredible 7-0, will they go 0-7 because they have played Super Hot Crew and the Copenhagen Wolves, and this week will determine that outcome.
It's going to be interesting to see if they can go mirror. I don't think any other team's done that. And as a team, they're struggling to adapt to a consistent playstyle on the 4.1 patch, which we are playing here this week, guys. They've tried the double AP, and they were not successful with it. They lost 3 games trying it. Gragas and Fizz, Rumble and LeBlanc, as well as LeBlanc and Orianna. And out of all of the double AP comps that we've run in Europe, the only game that has been won out of the 4 was when the Super Hot Crew beat Alliance. And they were running Lissandra and Gragas. They destroyed Alliance. They played it perfectly. So we'll see if Fnatic's learned anything from them.
And of course, we can't talk about Europe without mentioning Rocket, who are now in a commanding position of the league. They're continually impressive throughout every single game they play.
Yeah, and after securing the top spot last week, Rocket will now look to defend that position with the entire league wanting to take the spot from them. One of the best things about Rocket is the diversity. They have played 23 out of the 59 champions that we've seen in the whole EU LCS, and they keep varying up the champions and their playstyle to continue racking up the wins.
And of course, finally, the big news of the week is Gambit having to substitute 4 members of their team due to visa issues. One of them has not attended due to English, of course, not being his main language, which is Genja, of course. They will be back next week. However, this weekend, we're going to be seeing a very different Gambit lineup.
Yeah, so in terms of the players that have joined, Nukeduck and Zoro from the Ninjas in Pajamas, along with Alberto and Fury, will be joining Edward to compete under the Gambit name this week. It's going to be a very tough week for Gambit, and we'll touch a little bit more on the players as we get to the game later in the day.
So let's check out the table to see where the European team stands currently. At the top of that pile, it is Roccat. They are in first place with 9 wins, 3 losses, and currently are on a red-hot 4-game win streak. Next up is Gambit. Of course, they have a lot of substitute this week. Will they be able to hold that second spot? They have 8 wins and 4 losses. And then, of course, it is Fnatic. As we mentioned earlier on, they went 7-0. Will they go 0-7? They started out in a commanding performance, but after 5 games on a row, they have lost now.
Yeah, it's a bad position for them. Down at the bottom half of the table, SK Gaming and Superhot Crew are tied at 6 wins and 6 losses apiece. Interestingly, both teams have secured 4 wins out of their last 5 games, and the last 3 teams are Alliance, Copenhagen Wolves, and Millennium. They share that final position at 4 and 8 records.
And of course, that brings us to today's matches. First up, it is Millennium. They're going to be hoping to keep the momentum going after beating Fnatic last week, and they're going to be facing the Copenhagen Wolves in the first game of the day. Then a very different looking Gambit will be facing Roccat, who continue their winning streak.
Yeah, after that, the Superhot Crew will try to extend their own winning record as they face a Fnatic team that has been looking very shaky. And finally, SK Gaming takes on an Alliance team that needs some wins to pull themselves out of the standings. It is also an even-numbered week.
It is an even-numbered week. They're going to try and keep that curse going. And of course, this week we'll be keeping an eye on 5 top players. Starting out will be Nukeduck. He is standing in for Alexic, and in itself, they are very big boots to fill. And so far, as a player, he's never won a single game in this studio out of 5 games. He won't like hearing that because he's just off the side waiting in the wings to speak to you guys, but there's a lot of pressure on him replacing Alexic for Gambit. Of course, next up, well, it's Froggen. Well, he went man mode last week, didn't he? We saw him, Alliance losing 2 games once again in that odd week, but this time Froggen turned into a solo mode god and tried to single-handedly carry the game with Kale. As you can see the stats there, 5 out of 6 towers for his team. Incredible stuff. And I want to see if he's going to be back to being that team captain that he really needs to be.
Yeah, he cannot win games alone despite the attempts he's tried. My first play is going to be Vander. I think his Thresh and Morgana play is phenomenal, and in my opinion, he is the strongest Thresh of the split so far. It helps that he's got to play the champion 8 times, and he's got an incredible 7.78 KDA on that champion. Next up, another support, N-rated. He's got exciting champion picks, and he's steadily improved from week 1 up until now. He also helped Candy Panda get MVP in week 3, and his aggressive, engage-heavy champions like Annie are fantastic to watch. Finally, for a slightly different reason, it is going to be Soaz. He's been struggling to find form over the last few weeks, and I was happy to see him on Renekton last week, but he needs to find the gameplay and the form that helped him win lanes and dominate earlier in the split. Interestingly, Soaz was the first player to pick Trundle in the LCS, but has not played it since.
So, don't forget, guys, you can get your stats on all of the pros, along with the VODs, schedules, and much more over at lolesports.com. While you're there, find out how to join us here live in the studios by clicking on tickets for all of the details.
And while you're there, you can also submit your vote for today's games and tell us who you think will win. Just click the schedule link and then click on the thumbs up next to the team of your choice, and we'll be checking in throughout the day to tally those numbers.
And of course, we'd love to hear from you guys on Twitter as well. So write to us at LOL Esports and tell us what player / champion combo is your favorite to watch in the European LCS and why?
So I highlighted Vander in my players to watch, and I think it's because his Thresh is just off the chain. For you guys at home, be sure to send your answers to us at LOL Esports and tag them using that hashtag LCS. Later in the show, we will be reading some of our favorites on air. Obviously not mine.
Not yours.